Well, tonight we're learning more about the woman who was shot dead in Copper's Cove yesterday. In the afternoon is when this took place. Police identified her as 33-year-old Destiney Carey.
Carey was a clean business owner and a mother of 6. Understandably, her family is devastated.
The phone rings at exactly 12:25 p.m. on April 7th, 2022. A 911 dispatcher in Copper's Cove, Texas, picks up the line. 911, what's your emergency? Silence, then screaming. Raw, desperate screaming, bleeding through the phone before the line goes dead. The dispatcher stares at the disconnected call. Hang-up calls happen, but not like this. Not with that sound of pure terror echoing in the background. Within seconds, patrol units are racing toward the 1000 block of Hobby Road. Officer arrives at a quiet residential street. Normal house, normal neighborhood, nothing looks wrong from the outside. He walks to the front door and knocks. Police, open up. A male voice responds from inside. Wait. The officer knocks again. Still waiting. Then he hears it. Screaming coming from inside the house. Not the kind of screaming you ignore. The kind that makes your blood freeze. He kicks the door open. Gunshots explode from inside the residence. Not one, not two, several gunshots, firing as the door splinters apart. What he finds inside will haunt him forever. A woman lies motionless near the front door. She's not moving. Blood everywhere. Just feet away, a man is on the living room floor, also bleeding from gunshot wounds to his torso. The officer immediately handcuffs the man and starts CPR on the woman, desperately trying to save her life. Paramedics arrive within minutes, but it's already too late. Destiney Jassmund Carey, 33 years old, mother of 5 children, successful business owner, registered nurse. Dead at the scene. The man on the floor? Kevin Frazier, 37. Decorated Army Staff Sergeant with 12 years of military service. Her husband. But here's what makes this case absolutely insane. Destiney was found right by the front door. She wasn't running away from the police, she was running to them. She had called 911 for help, and as that help arrived, her husband shot her down. The officer who kicked down the door, he got shot too. A bullet went through the window, passed through his pants leg, and embedded glass shards in his skin. Kevin Frazier would be interviewed 3 separate times by police. His story would change every single time. The medical examiner's findings wouldn't match his version of events. And the question that will keep you up tonight: if Kevin was also shot, who shot him? Drop a comment right now. Have you ever made a 911 call that changed your life forever? We're reading every single one. What happens when the person you trust most becomes the person you're running from? Meet Destiney Jassmund Carey, 33 years old and living what looked like the American dream in Killeen, Texas. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. By day, she worked as a registered nurse in Georgetown, caring for patients who needed her most. But that was just the beginning of her empire. Destiney owned not one but 2 successful businesses: High Sadeti Boutique and High Sadeti Shoetique, both located on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. She was the local designer, creating beautiful clothing worn by women and models throughout the Killeen area. Her boutiques weren't just stores, they were launching pads for other people's dreams. Here's what made Destiney special. She didn't just build her own success, she pulled others up with her. She ran training classes teaching people how to start their own businesses, complete with branding kits and step-by-step guidance. While most entrepreneurs guard their secrets, Destiney gave hers away for free, and she was expanding. At the time of her death, she was setting up a 3rd location in Dallas. The woman was unstoppable. Her sister, Demetria Fifi, living in Georgia, described Destiney as inspirational and full of life. She couldn't get Destiney's cute laugh out of her head, the kind of laugh that lit up every room she entered. Destiney was a devoted mother to 5 children and had recently become a grandmother. Her 18-year-old daughter Desiree would later say, "She was everything to our family. She took care of all 6 of us." The last time the family was all together was December 2021, when Destiney traveled to Georgia, to celebrate her nephew Tarek Carpenter's graduation from Georgia Tech University, where he was a football standout. Classic Destiney, always showing up for family milestones, always supporting everyone's success, but every perfect life has its shadows. Enter Kevin Frazier, 37 years old, decorated U.S. Army Staff Sergeant with nearly 12 years of military service. He'd served 2 deployments in Iraq, earned multiple awards, and worked as both a public affairs specialist and cannon crew member. On paper, he looked like the perfect partner for a successful woman like Destiney. According to family members, Kevin and Destiney were married. But here's what's strange. Nobody talks about their love story. No wedding photos shared by family, no romantic timeline, no how we met stories that usually come with tragic cases like this. What we do know is this: their relationship existed, but the details remain mysteriously quiet. Destiney's sister Demetria was on the phone with her moments before that fatal 911 call. She knew her sister was in distress. Think about that. Your last conversation with someone you love, and you can sense something's wrong, but you can't reach through the phone to save them. So, here's the question that should be eating at you right now. How does a woman who lifts everyone around her, who builds businesses and raises 5 kids and works as a nurse, end up dead on her living room floor? What happens when the person sleeping next to you becomes the biggest threat to your life? Because April 7th was about to reveal that Destiney's perfect life was built on a foundation that was already cracking. April 6, 2022, one day before Destiney died. The Copperas Cove Police Department's daily bulletin includes a report that should have been a massive red flag. Assault with bodily injury, family violence at 1002 Hobby Road, the same address where Destiney would be found dead less than 24 hours later. But here's the kicker. No charges were filed. Think about that. Police respond to a domestic violence call, documented officially, but nobody gets arrested. Nobody gets held accountable. The system that's supposed to protect victims just lets it slide. But that wasn't the first time police knew about trouble at that address. City officials would later reveal something absolutely shocking. They had received 7 calls to that house in the past year. 7 separate incidents where someone was desperate enough to call for help. 7 times the warning bells were ringing, and 7 times nothing substantial happened to stop what was coming. Kevin Frazier wasn't a stranger to law enforcement either. Back in 2010, Killeen police had arrested him multiple times. Assault with bodily injury, violations of magistrates' orders, violations of court orders. This man had a documented history of using violence and ignoring legal boundaries. But somehow he was still free, still married to Destiney, still living in that house where police kept getting called. Here's what makes this even more terrifying. Destiney knew she was in danger. Her sister Demetria was on the phone with her moments before the shooting, and she could tell Destiney was in distress. Not just upset, in distress. The kind of fear that travels through phone lines and makes your stomach drop. Imagine being Demetria in that moment. Your sister is hundreds of miles away. You can hear the panic in her voice, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to help her. You're just listening, helpless, as the person you love most in the world faces something terrible. The pattern was escalating. April 6th's domestic violence report. 7 calls in 1 year. Kevin's history of assault and violating court orders. Destiney's distress call to her sister. All the pieces were there. All the warning signs were flashing red. The system had multiple opportunities to intervene, to separate them, to protect her, but they didn't. Pause the video right here. If you've seen these warning signs in your life or someone else's, tell us in the comments. Your story might save someone. Because what happened next wasn't random. It wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of temporary insanity. It was the inevitable conclusion of a pattern that everyone could see coming, but nobody stopped. April 7th was about to become the day that all those missed opportunities, all those ignored warning signs, all those system failures would culminate in the most horrific way possible. April 7th, 2022, 12:25 p.m., the 911 call comes in as a hang-up. Dispatcher hears screaming in the background before the line dies. Units are dispatched immediately to 1000 block of Hobby Road. The responding officer arrives at what looks like any other house on any other street. He approaches the front door and knocks. "Police, open up!" From inside, a male voice responds. "Wait." The officer knocks again. He's following protocol, being patient, giving whoever's inside time to come to the door. But then he hears something that changes everything. Screaming coming from inside the house. Not arguing, not yelling. Screaming. The kind that makes every instinct in your body scream, "Back." The officer makes a split-second decision that will save his own life. He kicks the door open. The moment that door flies open, gunshots explode from inside the residence. Multiple gunshots firing as wood splinters and the door crashes inward. But here's where this case gets absolutely insane. The officer enters and finds two people on the floor, a woman lying motionless near the front door, that's Destiney, a man in the living room also bleeding from gunshot wounds to his torso, that's Kevin. Both of them shot, both of them bleeding. The officer immediately places Kevin in handcuffs and starts performing CPR on Destiney, desperately trying to save her life. But it's too late. Justice of the Peace Bill Price pronounces her dead at the scene. Kevin gets transported to Carl R. Darnell Army Medical Center at Fort Hood for treatment of his gunshot wounds. Now here's the question that should be driving you crazy. If Kevin shot Destiney, who shot Kevin? Police interview him at the hospital. Then they interview him again at the police department after he's treated and released. Then a third time. 3 separate interviews, 3 different stories. According to the arrest affidavit, Kevin's description of events from the scene of the incident, the hospital, and the subsequent interview at the police department were not consistent. Not consistent. That's police speak for, this guy is lying and he can't keep his lies straight. But it gets worse. His account of the shooting was inconsistent with the evidence obtained of Destiney's injuries, as described by the medical examiner. The physical evidence doesn't match what Kevin is claiming happened. The medical examiner's findings directly contradict his version of events. Remember that officer who kicked down the door? He didn't just witness a double shooting. He became a victim himself. A bullet went through the window attached to the front entrance, passed through his left pants leg, and embedded glass shards in his leg. Kevin Frazier didn't just murder his wife, he shot at a police officer. That's why he was charged with aggravated assault against a public servant on top of murder. Coryell County Justice of the Peace Bill Price set his bond at $1 million for murder and $750,000 for the assault charge. $1.75 million total. That's not just high, that's we think you're extremely dangerous and likely to run high. But here's the detail that will haunt you. Destiney was found near the front door. She wasn't running away from the police. She was running toward them. She had called 911 for help, and as that help literally kicked down her door, her husband shot her down. She was steps away from safety, steps away from the officer who could have saved her. Instead, she died reaching for help that arrived seconds too late. Kevin's story keeps changing, but the evidence doesn't lie. And what that evidence reveals about those final moments will make you question everything you think you know about this case. Kevin Frazier is lying in a hospital bed at Carl R. Darnell Army Medical Center, gunshot wounds to his torso, and police want answers. First interview. Kevin tells his version of what happened. Police take notes, document everything. Second interview, after he's treated and released. They bring him to the Copperas Cove Police Department. Kevin tells his story again. Problem, it's not the same story. Third interview, police give him another chance to get his facts straight. He doesn't. According to the arrest affidavit, Kevin's accounts were not consistent across all 3 interviews. But here's what makes this even more damning. His story doesn't just contradict itself, it contradicts the physical evidence. The medical examiner performs the autopsy on Destiney. The findings? They don't match Kevin's version of events. at all. Think about what this means. Kevin is claiming one thing happened, but Destiney's body is telling a completely different story. Bullet trajectories, wound patterns, blood spatter, none of it aligns with what Kevin is saying. So what really happened in that house? Kevin won't say how he got shot. Police never clarify this crucial detail. Did he shoot himself? Did Destiney somehow get the gun? Did he stage his own injuries to look like a victim? The silence around this question is deafening. But here's what we know for certain. When that officer kicked down the door and gunshots rang out, Kevin was conscious enough and mobile enough to respond to police commands. He was alert enough to be handcuffed. He was coherent enough to give multiple interviews. Meanwhile, Destiney was dead on the floor. The officer who saved his own life by kicking down that door, he didn't escape unharmed. That bullet that went through the window didn't just shatter glass. It could have shattered his life. The projectile passed through his pants leg, and glass shards embedded in his skin. Kevin Frazier shot at a police officer, a decorated Army staff sergeant, someone who swore an oath to protect and serve his country, opened fire on law enforcement. This wasn't self-defense. This wasn't a domestic dispute that got out of hand. This was attempted murder of a public servant. The bond amount tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the court took this case. $1 million for murder. $750,000 for aggravated assault against a public servant. Total, $1.75 million. Judges don't set bonds that high unless they believe the defendant is extremely dangerous and a serious flight risk. But here's the most chilling part of Kevin's inconsistent stories. He's a trained military professional, 12 years in the Army, 2 deployments to Iraq. He knows how to handle weapons, how to assess situations, how to follow protocols. Yet his story keeps changing like he's making it up as he goes along. Before we wrap this up, what do you think really happened in that house? Kevin's story keeps changing, but the evidence doesn't lie. Drop your theories below, because while Kevin Frazier sits in Coryell County Jail with his $1 million bond, one thing remains crystal clear. Destiney Carey called for help, help arrived, and she died anyway. The question isn't whether Kevin killed her. The question is why his story about how it happened keeps falling apart. Destiney Carey is dead. Her 5 children are now orphans. And someone has to pick up the pieces of a life that was destroyed in seconds. That someone is Demetria Fifi, Destiney's sister in Georgia. The same sister who was on the phone with Destiney moments before she died, who heard the distress in her voice, who knew something terrible was about to happen. Now Demetria has to become the mother to 5 children who just lost everything. She has to explain to them why their mom isn't coming home. She has to figure out how to move them from Texas to Georgia, how to start over, how to heal from trauma that will follow them forever. But first, she has to close down Destiney's empire. High Sadie Boutique and High Sadie Shoutique, the businesses Destiney built from nothing, the stores where she mentored other entrepreneurs, the dream she was expanding to Dallas, all of it has to go. Demetria and the family start selling off inventory. Every dress, every shoe, every piece of Destiney's vision gets liquidated. The money? It's going toward moving expenses, moving 5 traumatized children away from the place where their mother was murdered. The community doesn't forget Destiney. Family and friends organize a balloon release at her businesses on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. People who knew her, people whose lives she touched, people whose businesses she helped launch, they all come together to honor her memory. Desiree Cannon, Destiney's 18-year-old daughter, speaks to reporters. Her words will break your heart. My mom just always wanted to be happy. She was always a fun person to be around. Her laugh just lit up the room. She was everything, everything. That's what Destiney was to her children. Their everything. Zaria also reveals something that makes this case even more devastating. She took care of all 6 of us. 6 people depended on Destiney, her 5 children and her grandchild. 6 lives that revolved around a woman who worked as a nurse, ran 2 businesses, and still found time to mentor other entrepreneurs. Now they're all left behind, trying to figure out how to exist in a world without her. But here's what makes this case a complete system failure. It didn't have to happen. 7 police calls to that address in 1 year. A domestic violence report filed the day before she died. Kevin's history of assault and violating court orders dating back to 2010. Destiney's sister, knowing she was in distress, every single warning sign was there. Every red flag was waving. Every opportunity to intervene was presented to law enforcement, and they all failed. Destiney Carey didn't die because domestic violence is unpredictable. She died because a system designed to protect victims ignored every signal that she was in mortal danger. The balloon release was beautiful, the community support was touching, but none of it brings back a mother of 5 who died reaching for help that came too late. Here's what keeps me awake at night about this case. Destiney Carey did everything right. She called 911. She reached out to her sister. She tried to escape toward the front door when police arrived. She followed every piece of advice we give domestic violence victims about how to survive. And she still died because the system failed her 7 times before that final, fatal call. Think about those 7 police visits to her address. 7 times someone was desperate enough to dial 911. 7 times officers showed up, assessed the situation, and left without making any meaningful change. What were those calls about? We'll never know the details, but we know they happened. We know there was a pattern of escalating violence that law enforcement documented but didn't stop. The domestic violence report filed on April 6th, less than 24 hours before Destiney's murder, should have triggered immediate protective measures. Emergency restraining orders, mandatory separation, something. Instead, Kevin Frazier was free to kill his wife the next day. Destiney's legacy lives on through her children, who are now being raised by her sister Demetria in Georgia. It lives on through the entrepreneurs she mentored, the women whose businesses exist because she shared her knowledge freely. But her death exposes a terrifying truth. You can be successful, strong, surrounded by people who love you, and still become a statistic. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're a registered nurse or a business owner. It doesn't care if you have 5 children depending on you or a community that admires you. It only cares about power and control. Kevin Frazier had both. As her husband, he had access to her daily life. As a military veteran, he had weapons training. As someone with a history of violence that the system repeatedly ignored, he had confidence that he could get away with it. He was almost right. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233. Local law enforcement and emergency services can be reached at 911. But remember Destiney's story. Remember that calling for help isn't always enough. The system has to actually respond. Destiney Jassmund Carey was 33 years old. She was a mother, a nurse, an entrepreneur, and a mentor. She had plans to expand to Dallas. She had 5 children who needed her. She had a laugh that lit up every room. She called 911 for help. The help arrived. But sometimes, even when you do everything right, it's already too late.